the piano was central. You could not get from the kitchen to the bedrooms without walking past the piano. And it had a beautiful walnut veneer bench, and I like to look at that. And because the bench was in the middle, as a little kid where the keys are at eye level to me, I'd run around to one side and I'd hit a key and hold it. And I remember hearing the rolling harmonics, and then I'd run to the treble side and plink, plink, and run back to that bass side. No, I like this a lot better. And that memory, it's still fresh today. It could have been yesterday, the experience, and it's still that fresh in my memory. And fast forward to the early 90s, and that is what took me down the path that led to where I am now.
Welcome to Life with Strings Attached. I'm your host, Jamie Gale. This episode was filmed live on location in Tuscany, where I sat down with revolutionary guitar maker Sheldon Dingwall to document his biography. Born in a small town in rural Saskatchewan, Sheldon grew up in a kind of freedom that shaped how he sees the world, independent, curious, and driven to figure things out for himself. From retuning his sister's ukulele as a child and experimenting at the piano, to building and modifying his own instruments out of necessity, there's a clear through line. If something doesn't work well, he's got to find a solution. With more than 50 years in the music world, across education, touring, record production, repair, and manufacturing, Sheldon has followed his instincts to overcome many obstacles. He'll be the first to tell you that he didn't invent the multiscale concept, but he recognized what it could solve for the bass, applied it with purpose, and in 1993 brought the first production multiscale bass to the market. From there, Dingwall Guitars has continued to innovate through hardware, pickups, strings, electronics, and notable collaborations. This is a story about curiosity turned into craft, and craft turned into something that reshaped the future of guitar. Beyond all the innovations that the world sees, Sheldon is also one of the nicest guys you can meet. Thoughtful, empathetic, and kind. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Sheldon Dingwall, and I hope that you do as much as I did. Sheldon, thank you for being on Life with Strings Attached, for being willing to share your story.
It's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for making inspiring guitars.
Thank you. I've been asked, what drives the innovation, what drives building guitars, and I think it all comes down to dopamine.
Yeah?
It just makes me feel good.
All right. Well, let's get into that. Let's figure out where that started, because this one is going to be your biography.
Okay.
And so, we want to capture the stories of the guitar makers that I feel have made a substantial contribution to the guitar. That's Jamie's perspective, but I think others share my belief in this with your work. And so let's figure out why it's dopamine. Where does that start? So, when were you born?
I was born in 1961 in small town Saskatchewan, Carlisle, Saskatchewan, southeastern corner of the province, close to the U.S. border, and literally the middle of nowhere. My father was the local minister, and my mother was a retired nurse who led the choir, led the women's groups, and their life revolved around the church. Matter of fact, I was next door. Mm-hmm. And as a result of them being so busy and having so many kids to look after, and me being the youngest, I had an incredible amount of freedom as a young 0 to 5-year-old. And so I felt almost zero restrictions in what I could do, where I could go, and just opened the front door and away I went. And as long as I was back by dark, everything was fine. And wouldn't have it any other way.
Did you have siblings?
2 older sisters, and then 3 cousins that my parents raised together as one family. And, it was nice. It was nice having so many people in the house.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you think that shaped you?
Well, mainly in the freedom end of things. I guess I don't remember that much because we moved away from there when I was 5, but there's always somebody if I needed help, there's always somebody to ask. But everybody had their own lives, so that allowed me the freedom to pursue whatever I felt like. And that feeling of freedom, that independence, it's ingrained, and that's something that's very important to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're growing up free at 5 in southern Saskatchewan, early 1960s. Well, I guess maybe the mid 1960s by this point.
Yeah, it'd be 66. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, what's that like? What are the things that you think about growing up there that made you who you are today? And
Well, I guess if I look back, I had friends, but I also spent a fair amount of time alone. I remember playing on the highway. Fortunately, it wasn't a busy highway, but I do remember laying down on the yellow line and looking up at the sky and going, "Oh, this feels cool," and running around farmers' fields and things like that. So, yeah, I think if you give kids freedom, and if they're the right personality for it, they will learn to be resourceful. And if you want a career in business or in guitar making, you need to be resourceful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Was that ever a problem?
Not that I can remember. No.
You didn't run wild. You didn't become.
No, I never really had a wild streak. I was always. I think if you asked any of the neighbors, I was like a nice, polite kid, respectful. And then when their backs were turned, that's when I'd be climbing trees or riding skateboards or doing something like that. I dislocated my neck twice by the time I was 5, and I remember being in the hospital and this first time when I was 3, and they had a tricycle in the hospital, and I remember getting in trouble with the nurses for tearing down the hallways as fast as I could, and I learned to slow down as I passed the nurse's station, and as soon as I was past it, just speed right back up. They let me get away with that.
So you dislocated your neck through dislocating their shoulder, their knee. What happens when you dislocate your neck? Like, I just assume you're just floppy at that point. Like, how did this happen? And
well, I don't remember much between landing on my head and causing the dislocation and being in the hospital in traction with cables going over the back of the bed and weights on it. But I did spend 2 summers with like a plastic neck collar on, and that made me feel conspicuous. It's pretty hard not to ask a kid, "Dude, what's with the thing on your neck? What'd you do?" And that gets tired pretty quick.
Oh yeah, okay. All right. And no long-term effects from that?
No, but so that would have been by the time I was 66, and then starting in 68 through 78, I had 10 sets of x-rays on my head because I guess I was built a little bit like a lawn dart where, I had to grow into my skull size.
10 times.
10 times, 10 sets of
years.
x-rays, yeah.
Like, what happened? Like, I don't need every story, but come on, there's a common thread here. I mean, besides you and skull fractures.
Well, I liked action sports before there was such a thing. So I liked jumping my bike over things, and I liked freestyle skiing, and I liked skateboarding, and all of those came with a penalty of gravity, and you find out when you've pushed things too far. Yeah, that was pretty much it for the most part. Just being an active kid, and not hyperactive. I don't think I was ever accused of that, but certainly didn't think it was a bad idea to do a somersault off the garage roof.
Okay. All right. And so, I did wonder, I've seen video of you on a skateboard not so many years ago. Yeah, maybe around the NAMM show, possibly. You were at a skate park somewhere, maybe not. I swear I've seen you on a skateboard. As the Sheldon I see today, not so long ago, it's not like vintage footage of you. Skateboards, bikes, what was it? What were these actions for skiing?
So skiing was one of my career desires. Thankfully, I lived on the prairies and I didn't have the skill set or the drive and determination. But I have good balance, but there's a difference between good and great.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a guy from Saskatchewan who was number 7 in the world of freestyle skiing, and
like downhill?
Freestyle. So the tricks, the flips,
yes, but still down a hill.
Downhill. Yeah.
There's not a lot of hills where you are.
Not a lot.
How did that happen?
I don't know. I bump into him every now and again. It's been at least a decade since the last time, but I'd love to ask him.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's like akin to the Jamaican bobsled team.
Little
It's
bit.
like, how did this happen in this place?
Yeah.
All right. So you're a kid, you're free, you're breaking things regularly, which means you're a risk taker. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're okay with getting hurt.
I don't enjoy it so much anymore, but
I didn't call you a sadist. I said, like, you're okay with getting hurt.
yeah, it was. I never really thought about it. Never really thought about the repercussions. Yeah, of course you think about it a little bit, but you always think, I got this.
That's interesting, because I think of you as a pretty conscious person today. Is that different from when you were young? Has it taught you to be conscious in that way? I don't think of you as someone who does things haphazardly.
Yeah, I would say I do fall into the impulsive side of things. Now, I'd also say that a lot of that impulsivity can, in the background, there can be all kinds of mental processing that goes on beneath the surface that leads to what seems like an impulsive decision. But it isn't always the case of, oh, shiny, let's go get it. But there's a bit of that too sometimes.
All right. So the obvious part, where does music come into all of this? So far, you've mentioned that your mom played organ in the church.
Yeah.
Where does music start for you?
So my 2 older sisters were playing music and taking lessons from mom, and somehow there was a baritone ukulele that showed up. I think it was my older sister's, and she had a book, and I used to drive her crazy because I would play it and I didn't know how to play chords, and it just sounded like this sounds wrong. So I'd retune it in open tuning. And so I would have been under 5, but maybe 4 years old, and tuned it as close as I could to open tuning. And then I could play chords, and I could finger up the neck, and then she'd yell at me for detuning her ukulele, and you're going to wreck it. And then started piano when I was 5, but even before that, the piano was central. You could not get from the kitchen to the bedrooms without walking past the piano. And it had a beautiful walnut veneer bench, and I like to look at that. And because the bench was in the middle, as a little kid where the keys are at eye level to me, I'd run around to one side and I'd hit a key and hold it. And I remember hearing the rolling harmonics, and then I'd run to the treble side and plink, plink, and run back to that bass side. No, I like this a lot better. And that memory, It's still fresh today. It could have been yesterday, the experience, and it's still that fresh in my memory. And fast forward to the early 90s, and that is what took me down the path that led to where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
That combined with the knowledge and the desire to build guitars and zero knowledge of bass.
Mm-hmm.
And put pianos with guitars, and that ended up being the multiscale bass.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we left it a lot in the middle there, so let's not rush totally forward on that one. We will get there. But so far, we're still a very young child,
Yes.
who's experimenting with the piano, taking some piano lessons, retuning your sister's ukulele to a sound that you found pleasing. I'd be very curious to know what that actually sounded like. I think we'll never know at this point. And, at what point in time did you switch from piano to a stringed instrument that wasn't a ukulele, young child? That would lead to the serious part of it? Because, I know that you did spend years as a performing musician, as a guitar player, right? And so where does that part of your life start?
Well, I'll go back a little further than that.
Mm-hmm.
My parents used my desire to play drums.
Mm-hmm.
They used that as leverage to keep me learning piano. And so, even though I hated piano, I went through with it because I really wanted to take drums. And so I think I started drums at 10 and had a full kit, lucked into a used set of Ludwigs, that I loved. And, I don't think I was much older than 10 when I got those.
Mm-hmm.
And drums were my most natural instrument. My friends started getting into guitars at 12, and that's what got me into it.
Mm-hmm.
And at 12, I tried to convince my friend to let me take my newly acquired jigsaw and cut up the body, because I thought it would look really cool if I cut a heart shape into it. And,
yes.
And so my first guitar design was actually a telly with a heart. And I'm so glad he said no.
As a guitar builder and a player, you have a sense for when something's working right. That's why so many of the world's best trust D'Addario. Unmatched tone, perfect intonation, and strings made to the tightest tolerances in the industry. That reputation is no accident. It's the result of 400 years of being obsessed with quality and innovation. D'Addario, when you know, you know.
All right. So you're 10, 12 years old and you're playing drums. Do you still play drums today?
My drums got burned up in the fire in 96. And so that ended any playing of drums. And I've recently bought a kit, but it's in storage at the shop. And so I bought a pad and some sticks, just as I work on my laptop doing design work. If I run into a brick wall of creativity, then I'll take a quick break and maybe play a little bit on the pad or play some guitar or go for a walk or something, just to give my brain time to recharge and get back to it.
Yeah, totally get it. There's a drum set in my living room in Canada.
Yeah, very cool.
All right, so you're playing drums, and you get into guitar, but what does that look like? So when do you start to get serious about the guitar?
Well, I have one memory of the guitar lessons I started taking started with an 8-week introductory, and you have to pass an exam before they'll let you move on. And I remember improvising the song, and the teacher commenting on it, probably not pleased, but supportive. But I was still much further ahead on drums. And so I ended up teaching at that academy, teaching drums all through high school. and guitar was kind of catching up as I was as that was processing. And they were an Ibanez dealer, and I don't know what gave me the inspiration, but I decided to buy an Ibanez and tear it apart. It had no body contours, and so I did body contours with a power sander in my parents' basement, and then painted it zebra stripe in using borrowed equipment, and that was my guitar for my entire professional career. That was one of them. It had a whammy, but the whammy didn't work very well, and so the first actual guitar designs were locking bridges because I couldn't afford a Floyd Rose and they weren't available in Canada. And, that was pre-internet. So had no idea how they worked. So just figured out how to make them on a drill press, and not cut my hands and injure myself with flying metal. It got away lucky, I would say. But, you asked about, didn't you worry about the repercussions? And, if you go back to the 60s and 70s or the 40s and 50s, people weren't so concerned with safety back then. I remember being, when I first started wanting to build my company started as building just replacement guitar necks. And the advice by an old time woodworker was to make a shaper knife. And if you can't find the proper steel, you can always take a file and grind off the teeth and turn that into a shaper knife. And that's what I did. And that would be incredibly illegal to do now. But back then it was, if you don't have it, make it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so your argument isn't that you weren't reckless, society was reckless, and you were in a reckless society.
I believe viewed through 2026 lenses, the 1970s, like, how did we survive?
Yeah.
How did we survive our youth?
Yes.
And when I go to third world countries now and you're walking on really wobbly steps on the side of a mountain and there's no guardrail, I think, wow, we've really gotten soft in North America.
Yeah.
Not that it's a bad thing.
I once went to my father's village in Newfoundland and thought about building a house there and living there. And I talked to my uncle about what I need to do to get the water or whatever. He's like, you take it. I'm like, no, it's, who do I talk to? City permits or something? He said, no, it's spring water. It's on the mountain. Just take it. And I couldn't wrap my head around it. I said, no, it can't be that easy. You can't just take it. But he looked at me like I had three heads. Like, what is your problem? The water's there. Take it. It's a different life. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you got a guitar, but you shaped it yourself. And then it had problems and you started fixing them.
Yes. And my musical dream was to be a studio musician. And so forget the year, but early 80s, TIAC came out with the Porta Studio, the 144.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? I would rather spend money on that because I can learn and grow on it and not be limited for time than spend the same amount of money in a studio. Not sure it was a good idea, but so I recorded a bunch of demo tapes. I had all the instruments, so I could just record it on my own, playing all the instruments, and then headed out to Toronto thinking that, all right, I'm going to show up at A&M Records or whoever and hand them a tape and they're going to go, awesome, I can't wait to listen to this. And so I toured around Toronto to every record store or every record company I could find in the yellow pages because, again, no internet.
Yes.
And And I got rejection letters from all of them, except for a couple of really small time ones. And I was a little bit of a Groucho Marx mentality. I wouldn't want to belong to a club that would have me as a member. And so that didn't fit my youthful arrogance of where I thought my career should go. And so I started my own record company and hired a studio and a producer and musicians and recorded a couple of songs. And then from my parents' basement in my bedroom, called up CBS Special Products division and lowered my voice and tried to sound real professional and talked them into printing records for me. And so I sent them the master tape and designed a logo and a while later 1,045 showed up at my door. And so then I went around to all the local record stores and radio stations, and I got the records positioned in stores on consignment, even like Sears in the Hudson Bay. Back then it was the 70s, so or the 80s, so they actually let me put records in their store on consignment.
Really?
And I probably sold dozens. I know I threw out a lot, but I don't think the lesson there was learned until much later. And that is, good for you for having the balls to take on a project like that. It was complete ignorance, but determination.
Amazing. That's I'm processing, Sheldon. I don't know whether it's moxie or naivety.
A lot of that.
It sounds ballsy and really sweet at the same time. Retrospectively, looking back at it today, it seems like, wow, and you did it.
And the funny thing is that I had covers printed.
Yes.
And I had no idea what typesetting was, but I was a nerd for letter-set.
Okay.
And so I, letter by letter, typeset the entire cover using letter-set. Took it into the printer and he goes, "You did this by hand? We could do that. We have machines for that. Why waste all that time?" It's like, oh.
Yeah. That's interesting. This typeset thing has actually come up repeatedly in the podcast in the last year with people who did this and were interested in that.
I'm not surprised.
What do you think that is?
I don't know, but I got interested in silk screening and with no knowledge that that's how you put logos on guitars.
Yeah.
I got interested in letter set and would flip through the catalog and just look at all these fonts. And none of it rubbed off on me with a sophistication with fonts. But the interest is there. And I don't know. There are some similarities in that world that I think have synergy with the guitar world.
Yeah, it's still kind of doing stuff with the hands, right? It's still a tactile experience as creation. So, okay. So you go to Toronto, you get rejected. You say, okay, I'll just do it myself. You go and start your own record label. You sell dozens of records, as you say, and there's a point where you're touring around and playing guitar. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was saving money to go to Chile, and so I had savings. I gave a record to a local band that I kind of hit it off with. They were based out of Edmonton, and a week later I got a call. "Hey, Sheldon, we're looking for a guitar player. You said you play keyboards too. We're looking for a guitar player, keyboard player. Would like to join our band." And I thought, Chile to go hang out or join a band and tour Canada. All right, I'll do that. and packed up my stuff and hopped on the train and then the bus. And within 2 weeks, I was out of money, but I was taken on as a partner in the band.
Mm-hmm.
And within another 6 weeks, I became co-owner. And I'm not sure why. I think it was, I don't know. So it ended up being the two of us, co-owners, and we owned equal shares of the debt.
Mm.
And we were basically traveling around. Back then, you could play 6 nights a week and travel on the 7th. And so 300 shows a year, which is unheard of these days. But back then, that was normal. And the economy supported it and the clubs supported it. And I learned lessons that I still use to this day, how vulnerable you are as a musician. If your guitar is what's making your living for you and you have a problem with it, well, then that problem isn't going to happen during business hours in a city across from a music store. It's going to happen on a Friday night when the club is full and they're going, come on, it's time to go.
Right.
And you're panicking. So we try and make our instruments as rugged as possible, because I've been that guy that had gear failures on a Friday night.
Yeah. All right. So when does it go from playing to making guitars? What's that? Besides having to fix your own guitar on the road, I presume a little bit. But when does that start to become the work, though?
Well, yeah. So before I went on the road, I started building a few guitars. I hadn't completed them yet. And I'd come back and I'd have maybe a week off. And so I'd do some more building and then I'd take these out on the road. And at that time, it was the era of the shred guitar. And Randy Rhoads was popular and he was a classical player. I wasn't a fan of Randy Rhoads, but it made sense to me that a wider neck would be easier to play chords on and play faster.
Mm-hmm.
So I called up Larrivee and I told him what I was looking for. I also had my first neck idea was an asymmetric carve that looked like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wrap your thumb around, it supports and that is thin at the treble side.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, I didn't stop long enough to realize that when you flipped it around the other way, it was actually a lot more comfortable.
Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand-built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument-friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com.
Anyways, so I called up Larrivee and asked them if they'd make me a couple of necks to fit on a Strat. And they did. And so I had them make 1 2-inch wide and 1 inch and 15/16 or something like that. Super wide.
11/16.
7/8 maybe. Yeah. Crazy wide. And so those were on my guitar. And then I was in a music store in Edmonton and there was a Gittler. And another memory like it was yesterday. Picking up this Gittler and going, oh my God, I can vibrato entire chords and I can bend with ease because there's nothing to stop my finger. I can get a better grip on the string. It's effortless. And so that would have been a Saturday. And on the following Monday, I went out and bought files and scalloped my ebony fretboard on my bed and got ebony dust all over the sheets and finished just in time to string it up and go play it that night. And I was sold on scalloped necks. So that became the business plan for the first guitar company. Gave myself a limit of, if you haven't succeeded by 25, then that's it. And by 24, I was like, it's super clear that we are not going anywhere fast. We're a club band, and that's a hard life. and ended up getting my nose broken. And essentially I was homeless when I wasn't on the road. I'd be sleeping on girls' couches. So I'd met my eventually first wife, and I was like, yeah, it's time to give this up. So I went back to Saskatoon. My sister's uncle-in-law built acoustic guitars in his garage as a hobby. And so I talked him into teaching me as much as he could. And in trade for, I would mow his lawn. I would help him wire his house. I would help him do construction projects. And he was a great guy, Alf Wilson. Almost every machine in his shop was built by him, including bandsaws and drill presses. And he came from that farm mentality. So started building these Strat replacement necks that were scalloped. And I came up with a idea to machine scallop them using a radial arm saw where the blade was raised up to about here. I took skateboard bearings and made a track, and I would be doing this with this blade spinning in my face, scalloping, and by turning it, you'd get different radiuses.
Yeah.
And live to tell the tale. And so I started building these necks and selling them to the local community, and they sold well. And until everybody who wanted one had one, and then that was at the end of that. So people started asking for bodies. And so I came up with a couple of body designs and took out a small ad in Guitar World magazine, like a little 2-inch square classified ad. And my phone started ringing. Like I was getting 3 calls a day off that ad. And that led to guitar sales. I guess I kind of missed the part where I started a repair business. Local music store, HEL Music, offered me free space in their basement in trade for starting up a repair department. And I'll take anything for free. And so it started out maybe 200 square feet and grew that into, it was one of the larger repair operations in Western Canada. We were getting guitars shipped in had a guitar shipped from Texas, all over Canada, up into the Northwest Territories. At that time, there weren't a lot of really good repair people, so all you had to be was good enough for people to talk about you, and word spread. And so that was, to me, the university of learning what other people's mistakes were, coming up with a solution for it, and then taking that solution and putting that into your own guitars. And that informed a lot of how I build guitars to this day. And so repairs and building guitars. That Guitar World ad was for necks and bodies, but the inquiries I got were for complete guitars. And so I would build complete guitars, ship them, and then get a call from the bass player of the bass player in that band of the guitar I just sent. That's about the least eloquent way of saying that. But anyways, the guitar sales would trigger bass inquiries. And I go, I don't know, what kind of bass do you want? And they'd say a 5-string bass. And I'd ask them, what are you looking for in a 5-string bass? And they all said, I want a good sounding D. And because I didn't have experience in bass guitars, I was like, I don't know what I could do that somebody else hasn't already done. So I'm not going to take your money and waste your time. And then I couldn't sleep because that problem's rolling around in my mind. And it's like, well, piano, B's not too low. You can get a good sounding B. Well, how are the piano people doing it? So I talked to the local Baldwin salesman, and Baldwin had just done a lot of research into clang tone, which is the harmonic that runs the length of the string. And he set me on the path of looking for the solution in this scale length. So I took a Fender P and I took off the G string and found a 130 string, and I put that on the G string in the G string position because that gave me the entire headstock where I could move a temporary nut back and forth to find, well, what does scale length do? And so slid it to 35 inches, and it you could hear an improvement. It wasn't night and day, but it was an improvement. And then 36, there was more of an improvement, 36 and a half. And it really started to, it was like that. And at 37, it matched the E string perfectly. And so took a tape and went, 37 inches, great. Who's going to want to play a 37-inch scale bass? I guess it was a fun experiment, but it's dead in the water. And I was frustrated about that until I opened up a Guitar Player magazine and saw Novak's guitar. And it was like, only the B string needs to be that long. The rest can be a more normal length. There is the solution. And there's a quick succession. So this would have been maybe spring of 92. There was a, what's the Luthiers Guild?
Oh, well, there's a couple of them. There's Asia and there's GAL, the Guild of American Luthiers. Yeah.
They were having a convention.
Okay.
Sign up for that. And this is stretching the story probably longer than it needs to be, but we talked a little bit about the sort of drive when you have a vision and you follow it. So I was used to every now and again having to work an all-nighter. But getting ready for this convention, I'd taken on 3 guitar sales and I was behind as usual. And I promised that I'd have them shipped before I left. And these were my first international sales. And so they're pretty important to me. And it was clearly I wasn't going to make my deadline. But I don't have any choice. It's a deadline. I gotta leave at a certain time. And so I worked through the night and got to the next day, and I don't feel like I'm any closer to having these things done. So I worked all that day and got to quitting time, and it's like, gonna have to keep going. So I ended up working 54 hours straight, got them into boxes and into the UPS truck, jumped in a car and started heading down to South Dakota, where I met Ralph Novak. So it was found the 37-inch scale, saw Ralph's guitar, met Ralph, all within probably 6 months. And my first fear was that, it's going to be unplayable. Everybody thinks that. So I closed my eyes and I played chords, and I was like, what? Doesn't feel any different. So I said to Ralph, I think this is a great idea, but I think it applies more to bass than guitar. And we kept talking, and he said, well, I tell you what, I want to keep going with the guitars. If you want to do basses, you be the bass guy, I'll be the guitar guy. And we shook hands and made a deal I would pay him licensing and go back to Canada and start building basses. And so that was summer of 92. Ordered some headless hardware because I was a big fan of Kubicki back then, still am. And so I was heavily influenced by Kubicki. The hardware shows up and it weighs way too much and it's big and bulky. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? This is terrible. So I sent it all back, ordered in regular tuners. And Kaler had a bridge with removable saddles. So I thought, I'll order that in, throw away the base plate, and just make my own custom base plate. And so that became the very first, I called it Voodoo bass back then, January 14th, 1993, 7:30 in the morning. I get an all-nighter with a deadline to be at the airport by 9:30. And I took that base down to NAM. And the first person I met was Greg Kerbo in the airport. And then the second person I met was Steve Bailey. As soon as I walked into the show, and Steve took me around. Steve was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool." Took me around to meet all his buddies and sort of introduced me to things. And that's where I met Dennis Levy and had a 20-year relationship with Levy's. And because of Dennis being just a rock solid, kind gentleman. Yeah. Yeah. That one meeting, 20 years of business.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that got me to NAM, 1993.
Yeah.
Went home, tooled up. Well, I kind of tooled up as I was designing the bass. I created the tooling. And I had advice from Brad Laidlaw, who, when I was first starting up, was my boss. And I was like, "Brad, I've got these new guitar necks. How do I market these?" And Brad said, "Sheldon, don't waste your money on marketing. You're not ready yet." He said, "When you have a product that is truly worth marketing, you won't have to go look for people. They'll find you." And that was 100% the case with the bass. With the guitars, it was me pushing the product onto people and trying to get them to try it. And then as soon as I developed the bass, word got around and people were coming to see this thing, and drummers were coming and singers were coming. And there was a huge difference between me pushing something that people don't really want versus something where it's like, "Holy cow, I really want to see this. Please show it to me."
Yeah.
And so that got my first order with Mother's Music. I think they ordered 6 basses, which back then was craziness. And that got us into sort of multiple manufacturing.
This space is normally reserved for brands who make stories like this possible, like the Dario and the Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop. If your company belongs in this conversation, let's talk. We partner with brands who value craft, culture, and the quiet power of a well-placed idea.
Manufacturing of multiple instruments as opposed to one at a time.
Yeah.
While I still had to do the repairs at the same time.
Right.
And so also at that time, feeling guilt over the selfishness of the pursuit of building guitars. I think I was self-aware enough to know that, a lot of this is ego-driven. And coming from a family where they were in service of others, and me feeling like I'm really doing this because, well, it feeds me with dopamine. That's a selfish pursuit. And that really bothered me. I didn't really want to sink the rest of my life into that pursuit. I thought I should be doing something more for the world than I was doing. And a friend of mine, Greg Miller, we're having dinner one night, and he said, "Yeah, but Sheldon, what if the guy who discovers the cure to cancer does so because he's playing one of your guitars, and that gives him a chance to sit back and let his mind rest and float off to another place and come up with the idea. Would you be okay with that?" And I went, "Well, all right. Yeah, I can be part of the chain. I don't have to be the leading link as long as I can be part of the chain that does something for the world."
Amazing. And when did that happen? When did you help cure cancer?
I was still working on that one.
Yeah. I see.
I was a guinea pig too. That was late 80s. So that was fairly early in the career, but definitely in the time when I would be burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
And that was decades of burning the candle at both ends and dragging the people in my life along with me, for better or worse.
I wasn't there, but I certainly do have questions about whether or not that's really true. We all have to find some way to take care of things, to feed our family and such. And most of us do with something we're interested in doing, something we're good at doing, something of the sort. And it doesn't always pay off right away, and is that
Forever.
is that truly selfishness? I don't know. It's obsession, sure. But does that make it selfish? I mean, it's leading to something. You are making some money doing it. Maybe the prediction has some errors in it as to how soon it would pay off,
Or if it ever pays off.
Yeah,
That was the dark shadow that chased me my entire career. Was this might never pay off. This might be your life forever.
Do you know the song "Who's Got the Last Laugh Now"?
No.
Yeah.
Sounds like a country tune.
No, it's an old jazz tune. Maybe a Gershwin show tune or something. That they told Marconi that wireless was a phony. And ultimately it's a love song. That says that I could never get you, and whoa, who's got the last laugh now? And they talk about all the different inventors, all the people who did things, that Hershey and his chocolate bar, and the things that people laughed at and didn't believe in, and that ultimately paid off. And Sheldon, I mean, you're in the position now where it doesn't look selfish anymore. It doesn't look like a weird obsession anymore. It looks like who's got the last laugh now, like it paid off,
I've certainly laughed at for years.
Well,
we took off really strong out of the gate, and then the world started looking backwards, and everything was ripped jeans and black crows and classic rock, and most fads are like in and out in a couple of years. That held on for well over a decade, and so we went overnight from kind of a cool new startup to the uncoolest brand imaginable. And the only people who would buy our bass were the people that didn't care about cool. They were engineers. They understood. They understood what we were doing. They understood why we did it. They got the benefits, and they didn't care if it looked like a spaceship.
Mm-hmm. You did it.
Kept at it.
Yeah, well, but you think keeping at it, now this doesn't need to turn into a therapy session, but you think keeping at it was a selfish move. I mean, what's the difference between someone who shows resilience and persistence as to what you interpret as selfishness? I would say today that you have, through your persistence, let's say, to not assign any good or negative terms to it, through your persistence, you have made the guitar better.
I hope so.
Well, I feel so. And I experience a lot of guitars, and, I make the argument that I really don't think that we'll make parallel fret guitars over the long run. It might take 300 or 400 years for the parallel fret to disappear, but it's an inefficient solution based on a box saw. Like, it is not where you would put those damn lines if you were just trying to figure out where to put the right lines in the right spot. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of old technology and literally a box saw. The box saw determines the parallel fret and nothing else. Well, hang on, something else. Before we had metal frets, we had strings tied around the neck. And because the string finds its equilibrium, it ends up parallel to the string on a round neck, right? We had that on lutes, but that was an approximation. If we were trying to just figure out where to put the right spot to transition that string, we wouldn't do it the way that we do it on most guitars with the currently traditional parallel fret system. And so as those sort of old technologies go away and inefficiencies go away, and as people stop thinking that that's a weird new guitar, that's just what a guitar looks like, I think that the less efficient system just through attrition, disappear over time. And you're going to be the point. Now, I know Ralph, sorry.
Ralph Novak, yeah.
Curtis, pickup guy. Ralph, multi-scale guy, fanbrick guy. Now, I know that he found the solution and that you've shared in that with him. But frankly, it's your persistence, because Ralph didn't make it famous. And I don't want you to comment on that. I don't want you to feel weird about that. Okay, let me say, Ralph didn't make it famous. You made it famous. And he shares in that, right, through lots of patent payments, I think, over the years. But the reality is, you believed in it, you stuck with it, and the guitar is better because of it. And I don't know. I don't want to think that was just a selfish move. You know, I think that was persistence, and I think that it might have been obsession even, but it was, in the end, a better thing for us.
Well, thank you. I mean, it has worked out so far, and lots of people to thank on that. Like I wasn't alone. A lot of the times I was the gatekeeper of what ideas came from the rest of the team that made it through.
Mm-hmm.
I like to create collaboratively, and especially if there's synergy, bounce ideas back and forth. Sometimes it can lead to chaos and there's too many ideas, but sometimes it can take things in a direction that I wouldn't have been able to on my own.
Yeah, sure.
Many times. And so lots of people along the way. And then, of course, Adam Nolly Getgood was the guy that kicked us into the public's eye of a new group of musicians that needed what we'd already developed. We'd developed neodymium pickups, not because we were trying to solve a problem for down-tuned basses with gigantic strings on them, just because I thought neodymium was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out it's the best magnet for down-tuned basses with giant strings.
Mm-hmm.
And developed the multiscale bass to sound as good and as clear in the low end as possible, not because I was expecting this chuggy, syncopated gent music, but because I thought that was cool. And turns out that was exactly what they needed. So there were a lot of things that just happened to line up, right place, right time.
Mm-hmm.
I'd missed opportunities in the past and kicked myself for being, for not taking them seriously. So by the time Adam came around, it was like, okay, I've learned my lesson. This is an opportunity, and I'm not going to let it slip through my hands. So let's go.
So that seems to have propelled you into the much larger sphere of things. But there are some people along the way before then who, I mean, for years, I associated your bass with one person only.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that guy?
Probably Lee Sklar.
Yeah, Lee Sklar.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's interesting because I still hear him brought up today because he's still very active and has such an incredible recording history. When people say your basses are for like modern metal, someone will counter with, well, Lee Sklar is not a modern metal player.
Yeah.
You know, and so he seems to be, from my perspective, one of the anchors of your business, and probably a notable point that happened is your meeting of Lee. Would you agree with that? Or I mean, not that it drove your sales every day, but it was the context that gave some sort of legitimacy, frankly.
Well, yeah. I mean, how can you, what's the word I'm looking for? How could I put into words the effect and the importance of having Lee playing our basses? And Lee is, like you say, he's recorded thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of songs. He can play anything he wants. And Lee, without a contract, has just been a stand-up guy for over 30 years. And it's like, Sheldon, I'll use your 5-string. And he has on every 5-string part in the last 30 years, it's been a Dingwall bass.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for us, Lee doesn't like to switch basses when he's playing live. I want one bass that'll do everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't require a 5, notes below E or D, on any of the songs, then he'll play a 4-string because he's naturally a 4-string guy.
Mm-hmm.
But if it requires even one note below D, then he'll play his Dingwall 5-string the entire night.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been huge for us. And he's played on just an incredible number of music, a number of songs. And so where Adam brought a whole generation and a new style, Lee he is the person that made us a real company as opposed to an oddball company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember meeting Lee years ago in New York at a bass player live event, probably a few decades ago at this point in time. And for whatever reason, I asked him something about Dingwall. And he basically said that's just the clearest low B in the business. That's it. Like, if you got to play 5-string, you're playing Dingwall. And that stuck with me.
Oh, yeah. I agree with him on that.
Yeah. Well, it corroborates your story anyways. No, it's great. So, all right, listen, Sheldon, you're getting the Lifetime Achievement Award. You're standing at the podium. You've got the award in your hands. And you've thanked everyone. You've thanked your mom. You've thanked Lee. You've thanked, Ralph Novak. Sorry, Ralph. Ralph Novak. You have thanked Adam Nolly, Getgood. Is there someone on the list that you would feel like there's a moment there that if you didn't mention it, that you would be remiss later?
Oh, there's so many. Phil Kubicki, Glenn McDougall, Alf Wilson, my uncle that gave me my start, Byron Olson. Byron sat with me every afternoon for almost a year after I lost everything in the fire. He helped me reverse engineer the instruments. And so we took measurements, we figured out tooling, and he just did this out of the kindness of his heart. And I was trying to learn CAD prior to that, and with my experience with Byron, learned enough to get me started on CAD. I wouldn't have been able to do that on my own. I can't remember. Did I say my kids? Ralph Johnstone. Man, there's just so many people. Gord Boyce. He was the purchaser for Axe Music in Edmonton. And Gord convinced me to put quilt tops on our basses. And so I've noticed at the Montreal Guitar Show, I noticed that, those French guitars, I can tell it's a French guitar from across the room because the curves were sophisticated and elegant. And so what were the bases that I was building? I was building with a Saskatchewan mentality of why would you put quilt on a bass that's going to jack up the price? It's not going to sound any better. Like, why would you do that? And Gord said, Sheldon, trust me, put some quilt tops on your basses. I'll buy them from you. So I did. And that made a huge difference. So Jamie Gale, another guy who's been, we've known each other since 2010, I'd say 2011.
Somewhere around there.
And, you've been helping us for years and helping me to understand the other side of the business. It is a business, as you and I discuss. You're not just building guitars. You're actually trying to interpret what your customers want using your skill set and your talent to build them something that delights them. And that's not an easy process. And sometimes it requires a pair of eyes like yours, or sometimes it requires your experience to be able to, give my head a shake, Sheldon, get out of that frame of mind and take a look at this perspective. And that's been invaluable. I think you can be your own worst enemy when you're in a small business and you're struggling and you don't understand the business at large, and you're seeing it from your perspective, and you're in the middle of things. You can't see it with any kind of perspective. You need the 40,000 foot view.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Takes a village.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like you've had a lot of amazing people in your life.
Been really fortunate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even people that have been bad for me, have taught me lessons, and that helped me get where I am now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'd have to say that you probably deserve some credit in there, Sheldon, that you're the kind of guy who is kind, you're creative, you're well considered, and it's a joy to be around you. You enrich the lives of the people around you, and so you're probably attracting other people who want to do something good also. And so thank you for making inspiring guitars, and thank you for being a part of my life with Strings Attached. And I invited you here today to have this conversation because I think people want to know your story, because you've affected thousands and thousands and thousands of musicians around the world, Sheldon, who are inspired to play music because of what you've created. So thank you for sticking with it.
Oh, thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Before we start crying in a box of Kleenex, shall we?
You've been listening to Life with Strings Attached. If today's conversation meant something to you, consider passing it on. These stories find their place through the people who share them. A new episode comes out every Friday, right here, wherever you're listening. I'm Jamie Gale, and thanks for listening to Life with Strings Attached.